On a warm September afternoon in 1978, a man stood waiting for a bus on London's Waterloo Bridge. The city was loud. The bridge was crowded. The sun was setting over the Thames. Suddenly, he felt a sharp, sudden sting in the back of his right thigh. It didn't feel like a weapon. It felt like an insect bite, or a pinched nerve. He turned around. A heavy-set stranger was picking up an umbrella from the pavement. The stranger mumbled an apology in a thick accent, hailed a taxi, and vanished into the evening traffic. The man on the bridge thought nothing of it. He rubbed his leg. He boarded his bus. He went to work. 3 days later, he was dead. Not from a bullet, not from a bomb, but from a microscopic engineer's marvel. A weapon so small it dissolved inside his body, leaving no trace but a tiny puncture wound no larger than a hypodermic needle. This was not a crime of passion. It was an administrative act. A liquidation ordered by a head of state, designed by KGB technicians in a secret laboratory, and executed in broad daylight in a NATO capital. The weapon was designed to look like an accident, but the message it delivered was unmistakable. Silence is mandatory, and distance is no protection. Georgi Markov was not a soldier. He wasn't a spy stealing nuclear secrets for the West. He was a writer, a novelist, a playwright. In 1960s Bulgaria, he was a celebrity. He moved in the highest circles of the communist elite. He hunted with generals. He dined with party leaders. He saw the machinery of the state from the inside. But Markov had a flaw that authoritarian regimes cannot tolerate. He noticed things. He began writing about the corruption he saw, the hypocrisy, the mediocrity of the men in power. He didn't use slogans. He used satire. And in a totalitarian system, irony is more dangerous than a gun. A gun kills a man. Irony kills fear. The regime of dictator Todor Zhivkov quietly silenced him. His plays were banned. His books were pulled from shelves. Markov faced a choice: silence or exile. In 1969, he fled to London. He thought he had escaped. He believed that the English Channel was a wall the Bulgarian Secret Service, the Državna Sigurnost, could not cross. He was wrong. He hadn't escaped the regime. He had simply moved to a different part of the battlefield. And he was about to pick up a microphone that would turn him into a priority target. In London, Markov joined the BBC World Service. He also contributed to Deutsche Welle and Radio Free Europe. These stations broadcasted back across the Iron Curtain, piercing the censorship of the Eastern Bloc. Every week, Markov sat in a booth in London and spoke directly to the people he left behind. His program, In Absentia Reports, became an obsession in Bulgaria. He didn't just talk politics. He told stories. He described the private lives of the party elite. He mocked their pretension. He exposed their secrets. He personally insulted Todor Zhivkov, describing the dictator not as a fearsome leader, but as a humorless bureaucrat with a complex about his height. Zhivkov was listening, and he was furious. Markov was receiving anonymous threats. "Stop writing," they said, "or you will be silenced." Markov ignored them. He believed that in London, amidst the crowds and the law, he was untouchable. But in Sofia, the decision had already been made. The order came directly from the top. Georgi Markov had to die. And he had to die in a way that would terrify anyone thinking of taking his place. The Bulgarian Secret Service wanted Markov dead, but they lacked the technology to do it quietly. So, they turned to their masters, the KGB. Specifically, they engaged the Camera, the KGB's legendary laboratory for poisons and clandestine weapons. They requested a tool that could kill without leaving a trace, a weapon that would disappear before the autopsy began. The KGB offered two options: a gelatin that induces heart attacks, or a biological agent derived from the waste of castor oil production. They chose the second, ricin. Ricin is a phytotoxin. It works by entering a cell and dismantling its ability to produce protein. It destroys the body's machinery from the inside out. But ricin is hard to deliver. If you put it in food, the stomach acid neutralizes it. If you inject it with a syringe, the victim screams and the police find the puncture. The delivery system had to be subtle. It had to be instant. And it had to be mechanical. The KGB technicians fabricated a tiny pellet. It was a masterpiece of metallurgy. 90% platinum, 10% iridium. An alloy chosen specifically because it is biologically inert. The body does not reject it. It was 1.7 millimeters in diameter, smaller than a grain of rice. This pellet was not solid. It was hollow. Engineers drilled 2 microscopic holes into the sphere at precise angles. They filled the cavity with 0.2 milligrams of pure ricin. Then, they sealed the holes with a specific type of sugary wax designed to melt at exactly 37 degrees Celsius, the temperature of the human body. The plan was elegant. The pellet would be fired into the victim's flesh. Once inside, the body heat would melt the wax. The ricin would leak out into the bloodstream. The platinum shell would remain, invisible to standard X-rays and non-reactive to the immune system. To fire it, they modified a standard umbrella. The tip of the umbrella contained a pneumatic cylinder powered by compressed gas. A spring would be too loud. A trigger was concealed in the handle. All the assassin had to do was get close, press the tip against the target, and pull the trigger. It would feel like a bump in a crowd. By the time the victim realized they were sick, the poison would be systemic. And by the time they died, the ricin would have broken down, leaving no toxicological trace. It was the perfect murder weapon. Before Markov, there was a test run. 2 weeks earlier, another Bulgarian defector, Vladimir Kostov, was exiting the Paris metro. He felt a sting in his back. He saw a man carrying a bag run away into the crowd. Kostov fell ill with a high fever, but he survived. Doctors removed a tiny metallic object from his back. They thought it was shrapnel or a stray piece of jewelry. They didn't analyze it. The wax coating on Kostov's pellet had been damaged during the firing. The angle was too shallow. The poison hadn't leaked properly. It was a failure. The assassins learned from their mistake. They adjusted the mechanism. They checked the wax formulation. They realized the shot had to be perpendicular to the muscle to ensure deep penetration. They reset the trap. This time, the target was London. This time, they wouldn't miss. Back on Waterloo Bridge, the plan executed perfectly. Markov returned home. He showed his wife the red mark on his thigh. He told her about the umbrella. By that evening, his temperature spiked. He was admitted to St. James's Hospital with symptoms of severe blood poisoning. Doctors were baffled. His white blood cell count was skyrocketing. His blood pressure was collapsing. He was vomiting blood. They treated him for sepsis. They gave him massive doses of antibiotics. Nothing worked. The machinery of his cells was shutting down, organ by organ. The ricin was unzipping his biology. Markov was conscious enough to tell them about the umbrella. He told the doctors, "I have been poisoned by the Bulgarian Secret Service." But in 1978, in a London hospital, that sounded like paranoia, like a spy novel fever dream. On September 11th, 4 days after the sting, Georgi Markov's heart stopped. The poison had done its work. But the assassins had made one miscalculation. They assumed the British authorities would treat it as a natural death. They were wrong. Because of Markov's statements, Scotland Yard ordered a thorough autopsy. They focused on the wound in his thigh. They excised the tissue and sent it to the Chemical Defense Establishment at Porton Down, Britain's top-secret military science facility. Under a microscope, they found it. The tiny platinum sphere, 1.7 millimeters, the 2 holes. It was identical to the object removed from Vladimir Kostov in Paris. Suddenly, it wasn't a medical mystery. It was international espionage. Porton Down scientists couldn't find the poison. It had metabolized. But they tested the pellet on a pig using ricin. The symptoms matched Markov's death exactly. The cause of death was confirmed: ricin poisoning via a micro-engineered projectile. The weapon was found. The method was decoded. But the man holding the umbrella was gone. The leading suspect was a Danish citizen and Bulgarian agent named Francesco Gulino, codenamed Piccadilly. Gulino was detained briefly, questioned, and released due to lack of hard evidence. He vanished. Years later, after the fall of communism, General Vladimir Todorov of the Bulgarian service personally destroyed the Markov files to protect the state's secrets. No one was ever charged with the murder. The assassination of Georgi Markov remains the quintessential Cold War killing. It paved the way for modern state liquidations, from the polonium-210 used against Litvinenko to the Novichok used against the Skripals. It proved that a state could reach into a crowd in a foreign capital, touch you, and walk away. Markov's voice was silenced. But the echo of that click on Waterloo Bridge is still heard today. Whenever a dissident falls ill, whenever a critic vanishes, we look for the umbrella.